All right, so Syracuse football is off to a great start. They're 2-0. Things have mostly been really good, as we've talked about here on the podcast. But here are some things through 2 weeks that I would like to see more of from Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we are talking about things that we would like to see more of from Syracuse football, things that they can improve upon later on in the season, because it's been a great 2 weeks, but it hasn't been 100% perfect, right? There are still some stuff that Syracuse can obviously work on. I would like to see Zeed Haynes more unleashed. I would like to see the defense create more turnovers. And I would like to see the Orange play more of a complete game. And hey, next Friday night against Stanford is a perfect opportunity for all three of those things to be accomplished in one. So we're talking about basically what Syracuse can improve upon, even though it's been a fantastic first 2 weeks for the Orange. I want to make that clear. It has been a great start, but, we do have to nitpick a little bit here on today's podcast. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football HC is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB in all caps inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. So Zeed Haynes, let's talk about the dynamic wide receiver on Syracuse. He was a high-end 3-star or even a 4-star transfer this offseason, depending on the recruiting service that you want to use. On3, 24/7 Sports, ESPN, Rivals, right? All a bunch of recruiting services. He was either a 3-star transfer or a 4-star transfer. He's 6'1", 170 pounds. He comes from Georgia. He was with the Bulldogs last season. He redshirted, only had one catch for 20 yards, but still, we had high hopes for Zeed Haynes. He had a fantastic spring game with that 35-yard touchdown from Kyle McCord that got a lot of us really, really excited to see what he can do with this offense. And he was also named the #1 wide receiver on the depth chart heading into the year. So what's going on with Zeed Haynes? He hasn't been bad. He hasn't been terrible. I'm not going to kill the guy. He's been okay. He's been okay. His box score numbers through 2 games, 8 catches, 97 yards, 1 carry for 11 yards. That happened against Georgia Tech, but no touchdowns so far for Zeed Haynes. Here's the deal. And this is why it kind of goes back to Zeed Haynes. Syracuse's 2 top options right now are Arondé Gadsden and Trevor Pena. And there's nothing wrong with those 2 players. They're having terrific starts to the season. And we all kind of expected it from Arondé Gadsden, maybe not so much Trevor Pena, but still. They've both been very, very good to start the year. Both those guys, though, line up in the slot typically. Now, obviously, there are exceptions where they'll line up outside the numbers, but usually they are in the slot. Gadsden is, of course, a tight end, and Trevor Pena is a slot receiver. What does that mean? Well, Zeed Haynes is supposed to be the main guy outside of the numbers. And through 2 games, he has been okay. I just would like to see more. He had that 142-yard catch against Ohio. It was a deep ball. He ended up finishing that game with 4 catches, 70 yards. And he had another 4 catches against Georgia Tech. I think he needs more opportunities down the field. Because ultimately, his best value sometimes isn't necessarily catching the ball. It's stretching the field and having that shot for a deep threat. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't remember too many instances where we really saw Syracuse even target Zeed Haynes down the field last week. I would like to see Zeed Haynes more unleashed in this offense, because when you look at the overall makeup of it, the two best players so far are slot guys. And we need someone to really step up on the outside. Now, maybe it's not necessarily Zeed Haynes. Justice Ross Simmons, the Colorado State transfer, he's still dealing with a hamstring injury. I don't have a time frame on when he's going to return from it. I know that it is a very nagging injury. It is a sucky one because I had a hamstring injury, okay? I had one. I played sports in high school. I was a hockey player. I pulled it once. It can last for a little bit. Mine lasted for a month. Now, every case is obviously different. I don't want to speculate on how long this one's going to last, but I understand a hamstring injury really, really well. Bottom line, all right? But when he does come back, when Justice Ross Simmons is back on the field, maybe he's the guy that can operate more outside of the numbers. Is it Zeed Haynes? Is it Justice Ross Simmons? Is it a guy like Umari Hatcher? Umari Hatcher had a nice game last week, 5 catches, 65 yards, but I believe his one huge catch was actually over the middle of the field. So once again, it's really less so about Zeed Haynes being unleashed, although he is the number one wide receiver on the team. More so it is we need someone to step up who can operate outside of the numbers. We got plenty of guys who can control the middle of the field. We got Aronde Gadsden. We got Trevor Pena. Even LaQuint Allen. Even a guy like Will Nixon out of the backfield. Those guys are really, really good in the middle of the field. But we need someone to step up on the outside because, look, this offense has been humming. It's been great. If they can find someone who can be consistent on the outside, think about how great this offense really will be. This offense has been so good through 2 weeks, and I don't even think they've hit their full stride yet. I don't think they've hit their ceiling yet. They don't have Justice Ross Simmons there. Obviously, I say all this with a grain of salt, and that is that last week I remember I called for Dan Villari to get more touches, and maybe it's just the kiss of death because then Dan Villari proceeds to drop 2 passes against Georgia Tech. Come on, Dan, you're letting me down here. I still like you, though. I promise. I still do. Even though you dropped those passes. You're a great blocker, and you did have 1 catch. But does Zeed Haynes need more touches? Yes or no? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Is it someone else on the outside that should get more touches? Leave a comment below. A guy like Umari Hatcher or Justice Ross Simmons when he returns from injury. Maybe it's the true freshman Emmanuel Ross. I had someone DM me that on Instagram today talking about Emmanuel Ross. What's up with him? Is he someone they can get more involved with in the offense? Overall, though, once again, super pleased with how the offense has been so far. It gets a 99%. The 1% is really what we're nitpicking here, which is we need more of an outside threat, outside of the numbers. Once again, plenty of guys in the middle, someone more consistent on the outside, whether it's Zeed Haynes being unleashed like he was in the spring game, or it's a guy like Justice Ross Simmons and all the other guys that I mentioned. Once again, leave a comment below what you would like to see more of from this offense. Okay? Now, coming up, we're going to switch to the defensive side of the ball, which obviously it really improved from week 1 to week 2. But there's one category that Syracuse really needs to up. Hey, Locked On Syracuse fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you are going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine being the head coach of Syracuse just like Fran Brown? From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Syracuse fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB in all caps inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. I love going to live sporting events, and honestly, it doesn't really matter what the sport is. I did go to the Syracuse Georgia Tech game, and it was amazing. And I just love the energy in the building. And the way I get tickets for games is by using Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite feature is the curated deals. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. As I just teased, the defense really stepped up from week 1 to week 2. Obviously, they corrected the run defense after giving up 250 yards to Ohio, only 112 yards to Georgia Tech. They were much better, except in one category: turnovers. This team, through 2 weeks, has only forced one turnover. That's it. That turnover, of course, was James Hurd's first career interception. It came off a batted ball from Murad Watson in the fourth quarter against Ohio. It was actually a pretty big interception and effectively iced the game for Syracuse. So shout out James Hurd and Murad Watson for making that play. And also, to be fair to Syracuse, they do have a couple of fourth down stops. And it's just a weird technicality that I have said before on the podcast that a fourth down turnover on downs is not counted as a team turnover. Even though it is, they just don't count it. It's a separate category. All right? But to be fair to Syracuse, they do have 2 forced fourth down stops on their ledgers so far. Fadil Diggs obviously had the big one against Georgia Tech on that 4th and 1 on the 35-yard line, which led to the Arande Gadsden touchdown in the fourth quarter. That was a big one right there. But still, this defense needs to create more turnovers. We actually saw it against Georgia Tech. What happens when you get a fourth down stop like that? Syracuse's offense is really good. They're probably going to capitalize. Get the ball to them. I know that they've had maybe some opportunities against Ohio. Deuce Chestnut had that interception that was not an interception, but it was close. It was close. Nearly got one. But through 2 games, this team has only created 1 turnover so far. And I would like to see them create more of them because, as I said, the offense is really good. And when I was at the Georgia Tech game, there were very few instances that I recall where Syracuse really came close to one. There was very few times, and maybe it's a credit to Georgia Tech and Haynes King, but very few times I was like, man, Syracuse was close to getting a turnover there. Man, that was a tight throw that they got a hand on that. That was I didn't see a lot of chances for turnovers either. This team needs to create more turnovers, and here's why. Obviously, the offense is great. Syracuse is fortunate this season. They have more talent than in years past. Much more talent. And the teams that they're going against on their schedule, maybe there's only one team on it that you can definitively say has more talent. That's Miami at the end of the year. Every other team that they play against on their schedule this season has either equal talent to Syracuse or less talent to Syracuse. This is why it can be a special year for the Orange. Yes, there are toss-up games. Yes, there are games that Syracuse should win and everything. But bottom line, there's only one game where Syracuse has less talent, and that's Miami. Forget the Miami game for a second. Let's just talk about when they play Boston College, or they play a Cal, or they play a Virginia Tech. Teams that may have similar talent to Syracuse, maybe slightly less talent. You know what's going to decide those games? Turnovers. Turnovers are going to decide those games. If you want to count the fourth down stops, Georgia Tech had 1 turnover against Syracuse. Syracuse had 0 turnovers. So Syracuse won the turnover margin 1-0 if you count fourth down stops. What was the margin of victory? 3 points. That's 1 possession. To a team that might have similar talent to you. Creating turnovers is so big, especially in the games against ACC competition like a Boston College or a Cal or a Virginia Tech. This defense has got to do a better job of creating turnovers. Bottom line. They've only got 1 through 2 games. It was on a batted ball. James Hurd got the interception. Credit to him. We need more. I'm proud that the defense stepped up. They stopped the run. But I don't feel like repeating myself. We all know what the defense needs to do now to take the next step. I think Stanford's a perfect opportunity. Stanford's not a really good team. They're going on the road on a Friday night. You know what I want to see? Just a little sneak peek for Stanford week. I know we're in the bye week right now, but how about the defense forces 3 turnovers? How about that? 3 of them. I know it's a lot. And you're going against an ACC team. I get it. Force 3 turnovers. They're going to win that game by 40. I promise you. They'll beat Stanford by 40 points if this team forces 3 turnovers. If they don't, they'll probably still win. They probably will. But it might be a final score that doesn't look as pretty. It could be a 28-10 or a 31-10, something like that. And you guys might be saying, well, it doesn't look pretty. Who cares? Style points do matter. They matter. Think about it. Think about it this week. If Syracuse recovers an onside kick, they win 31-21 over Georgia Tech, and they're probably ranked. But because they didn't recover the onside kick, they only won 31-28. They're not ranked. So style points matter. And if you want to talk about maybe making the college football playoff, if they don't win the ACC, style points are going to factor in. So in order to capitalize on that, create some turnovers on Friday night against Stanford, 3 of them, hopefully, and beat them by 40 because this team has the ability to do it. So once again, this defense, it stepped up against Georgia Tech. It played much better. The next step for them going forward is to create more turnovers. They have 1 through 2 games. Let's get more from this defense. I believe in them. I believe they can do it. All right. This team has the talent to be able to force some more turnovers. Now, coming up, Syracuse obviously has won the first 2 games, and it's been mostly good. We've talked about all the good so far, not in this podcast necessarily, but throughout the last couple of weeks. But each of the games, there has been one category that has left you scratching your head. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday, September 15th, pregame moneyline bets. Profit Boost will be starting live Thursday, which is tomorrow, September 12th. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. So each game through 2 weeks, once again, there has been mostly good. Mostly good. But Syracuse has yet to play a complete game. I want to be clear here. I am not expecting perfection. I'm not expecting it at all. I think that's unfair because at the end of the day, the opponents on the other side, they're getting paid too. And yes, I said getting paid. All right? So I'm not expecting perfection, but I want to see a more complete game going forward from Syracuse. In each of the last 2 weeks, there has been one category of the stat column that has left us scratching our heads being like, yeah, you won the game and you played great. You did all the great things, but what was that? Against Ohio, we know what it was. It was the run defense. Yeah, you guys scored 38 points, but what the heck? You gave up 250 yards rushing to Ohio? Not Ohio State, Ohio. Eric Dickerson is not in the backfield. It's Anthony Tyus, but they made him look like Eric Dickerson. And we were all kind of left scratching our heads like, yeah, what a great win that was. Nice start to the era, but man, that run defense was bad. It was putrid. Fortunately, I talked about it on yesterday's podcast, how the coaching staff did a great job adjusting for Georgia Tech. And it was without Marlowe Wax, their all ACC linebacker, by moving Fidel Diggs to the linebacker position and essentially playing a 3-3-5. Diggs was the one who blew up the 4th and 1 play that obviously set up the touchdown McCord to Gadsden in the 4th quarter against Georgia Tech. We've gone over it a number of times here on the podcast. It was a great move, and they fixed the run defense in 1 week. It was fantastic to see. So what was the glaring issue for Syracuse against Georgia Tech? Well, we've gone over it already before. It was the special teams. You had a blocked field goal, a blocked punt, and you also had a missed onside kick recovery as the receiving team when you should be recovering those. Well, I don't know what the exact odds are on recovering an onside kick. I'm pretty sure it's about 90% of the time. Now, of course, Fran Brown addressed it, saying that it was his fault and that his team wasn't ready for it. Well, then it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You just have to get it fixed going forward. Going forward, you cannot have all three of those things happen. Okay? I talked about how unleashing Zeed Haynes would be great, or the rest of the outside receivers, or this defense needs to create more turnovers. Those things are luxury. Those are luxury goods. Syracuse can still win without having Zeed Haynes being totally unlocked. Syracuse can still win without creating a lot of turnovers on defense. You know what can't happen going forward? Special teams miscues, a collection of them. And I'm not going to sit here and say Syracuse was fortunate enough to beat Georgia Tech, or they were fortunate to beat Ohio. They were not. Okay? They weren't fortunate in those games. They thoroughly outplayed both of them. They outplayed Ohio, aside from the first quarter, and they outplayed Georgia Tech, but they only won by 3, and you can at least shave off 7 points from that if you recover an onside kick. If you add on a blocked field goal, or instead of it being blocked, it's good, that's a 13-point margin. And I know the blocked punt didn't lead to anything, but Syracuse got kind of lucky that Georgia Tech missed a field goal at the end of the half. The bottom line is you cannot have all three of those things happen again. It cannot happen. And Syracuse going forward is going to have to play a more complete game. Not perfect game, a more complete game. Because when you have 3 special teams miscues in a game, or if you let up 250 yards rushing in a game, those are the types of stats that can be like, it doesn't matter what else you do, you will lose. You will lose. Listen, if they play, they could very well be in the ACC title conversation come Miami the last week of the season. They could. It's entirely possible. In fact, I'm starting to believe that's what's going to happen. I promise you, if they play Miami, a team that has more talent than them, and or they let up 250 yards rushing, they won't win. It won't happen. Or if they have a blocked field goal, a blocked punt, or whatever, they won't win that game. Period. Even against some of the other opponents in the ACC or a UNLV in a few weeks. You cannot have those things. Once again, Syracuse was not fortunate. They thoroughly outplayed the first two games despite those two things happening. I'm just saying you can't have that one glaring weakness during a game because sometimes that one glaring weakness can come back and bite you in the end. Fortunately enough, they corrected the run defense in 1 week. And I believe the coaching staff, they will correct the special teams. Hopefully, there's nothing to really talk about with Stanford. Okay, Stanford's a team they should blow out at home on Friday night. Hopefully, we're not sitting there after the game being like, yeah, but what was that? No more yeah buts. How about that? Let's simplify it to no more yeah, but. All right, cool. So I think that is it for the episode portion of this podcast. As far as plans going forward, tomorrow, I want to do a little bit of a Syracuse football recruiting update because the Orange are in the running for a 5-star defensive end in the class of 2025. He was actually on campus for the Syracuse-Georgia Tech game, which was pretty cool. He saw a good game there, obviously. And apparently he has scheduled an official visit with Syracuse along with 6 other schools. And by the way, this player just recently decommitted from Florida State. Think about the irony of how we're now maybe in the running to steal a 5-star recruit from Florida State. What world are we living in? This isn't basketball. This is football. Are you kidding me? It's incredible. So we'll do a football recruiting update. Plus, on Thursday, tomorrow is Thursday. That is the normal podcast, a recruiting update. But also, we got ACC squad episode tomorrow. I don't have the time yet. But it has already been recorded. And trust me, Syracuse fans, you are going to thoroughly enjoy this one because you know what? We all deserve a victory lap. Because a lot of Kyle McCord doubters out there, all right. So those are the plans going forward. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And before I let you all go, leave a comment in the comment section below what you want to see more of from Syracuse going forward. Is it the 3 things that I mentioned, like Zeed Haynes getting unleashed or creating more turnovers, a complete game? Whatever it is, if you have any ideas, leave a comment in the comment section below.